Hello, and welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast. And those are 6 thoughts about reading, writing, or science fiction. And I am ready to get started for today. So this will probably be a bit of a short episode because I just don't have a lot of time this morning. I ended up having some extra things to get done, but I did want to make sure I got an episode in this week, so I've jotted down my 6 thoughts and I'm going to get started on those. So number 1, I was going to share how Firmament humanoid is going, which it's still not really. Again, once I got to that 45,000 word goal, I just kind of stalled out. And it just reinforces to me how much of writing is just like a mental game in a sense, and not just mental in the sense that of course it is, because using your mind to come up with the words and stories and all that, but also just a mindset thing. Like, I think that's why I've always had such good success when I'm not always had success with it, but when I really put myself into doing a NaNoWriMo, I have better success with that than sometimes other word goals. And I think it's just getting in that mindset of like, okay, like a bunch of us are doing this together, and this is like the National Novel Writing Month, and you kind of get caught up in it, and like the mindset is so important to success. And I think that's true in every area of life, but maybe even more in creative endeavors, because like I mentioned, you literally are using your mind completely to do the work. If I'm not in the right mindset to do the dishes, it's maybe harder to be motivated, but it doesn't matter that much. Like, it's easier to push through that than when it comes to I actually have to use my brain to come up with new things. And so yes, I need to get myself back into the writing mindset, because I really would like to finish this one up soon and not leave it sitting around for ages and ages where I've forgotten. Like, I do have written down the next things that are going to happen in the story. I have my outline, but still, I'm sure there's a lot of things I'm intending to do going forward in the story that I would forget if I let it sit too long. So, but then number 2, on the editing for Eleftheria, I have been doing that a little, not nearly making as fast progress as I was hoping. But I have been at least moving forward on that one, just again on taking my red pencil to it. So, and that again, actually, I find less mentally draining. Like, I know a lot of writers seem to hate the editing stage, and it's sort of known for being a big pain, but I honestly enjoy editing so much more than drafting. I find the first draft to be just the most draining. As I said, you're coming up with things out of thin air, like out of your own mind, and it's hard work. Whereas with the editing, you already have like the basic bare bones of the project there, and you're just getting to go through and kind of like perfect it and polish it and add to it, subtract from it, whatever, but you're not having to just like completely pull it out or completely make it up from scratch. So I find it a lot less draining, and I enjoy getting to see it just come together better, and I enjoy getting to improve it. So yeah, I don't find it as draining, and I have been able to make some progress on that I do need to like move it along, because I do want to get this one out there. And so number 3, just kind of continuing on the topic of working on those 2 things, what I really need to do now that I have gotten out of my routine, because especially while I was doing that 45,000 word goal, I had gotten into a routine, and I know everyone's different, so know yourself and what works best for you, but for me, I really thrive on routine. Like, I really need routine to get things done and just to make me less stressed. Like, it just helps me. And so that's part of what's been going on with these 2 things, is I just gotten out of the routine, and so I just need to probably change things up a little bit and like find a new routine, because there were things about that routine that had stopped working. And that's one thing, especially having kids, has taught me, is that you can't just like find a routine and stick with it forever, because kids are always changing and so their needs are always changing, and so everything else around that is always changing. And so I need to find a new routine that's going to work for setting aside specific time for writing. So I need to find out, like, am I going to need to go back to doing that in the early morning, which is not my favorite, but that's how I did, last year. Or am I gonna, is there a certain time in the afternoon that would work best to set it aside? Like, for instance, my baby has not been napping as well, and she's waking up earlier from her afternoon nap, so I'm just not having as much time in the afternoon as I was. So that's why I'm thinking maybe I'll need to, shift some of it up to the morning, or I don't know. I just need to experiment and find a new routine. And then once I get a routine in place, it's going to be easier to wrap these projects up. The number 4, I don't think I mentioned a couple weekends ago, I went to the Texas Homeschool Coalition Convention locally, and I have been many times as a student, as a kid growing up, but I'd never been as an adult, and especially as a parent. So I was really excited. I was wanting to start doing like a few just like small, more structured things with Violet. She's going to be 4 this summer, and she's so interested in reading and writing, and she loves sitting down and drawing, and she just seemed very interested in things like that. So I went and found her a couple of workbooks, and I bought a book to read aloud to them, and just some like preschool activities, and it was so great. And just being in that kind of atmosphere just gets you excited about, good education, and also for me, just instilling a love of reading in my kids is so important to me. And knowing, of course, not all of them, maybe not any, who knows, but like not everyone is a huge reader, and that's fine, obviously, but just a love of learning and an appreciation for good stories. And so far they do, like my older 2, they love books, and they're constantly like wanting me to read to them, and they love to like sit and look at books, and they'll like make up the stories, based on the pictures or based on their memory of it. Like my 2-year-old will sit down with green eggs and ham and be like, do you like it in a house? No. Do you like it with a mouse? No. And so I just love how much they love books, and hope that we can keep that up moving forward. And just being at the convention again got me really excited about that, and just hoping that's something that I can share with them and that we can enjoy together moving forward. Number 5 on my own currently reading, I'm continuing through the Mary Russell and Sherlock Holmes series by Laurie R. King, and I'm on a book called O Jerusalem, which, let me think, I think is number 5 in the series. I believe it's number 5. So yes, I don't have too much to say about that one because it's definitely, similar, but a couple things I've noticed. First of all, I was never that interested to get to this particular installment in the series, because for one thing, it's kind of going back in time. Like, it's telling you about something that happened previously, like kind of during the timeline of the first book in the series, and I just that didn't appeal to me as much as moving forward. And then also I knew, not just from the title, but because of where it happened, in the timeline, that Holmes and Russell were going to be in Jerusalem, dealing with some kind of project there. And I know that the main character, Mary Russell, is Jewish, and she's really into like Jewish theology and language and all this stuff that I am not that interested in. And so I was just like, oh, like not super looking forward to this one, but I'm just gonna listen to the audiobook so I can finish the series or whatever. And I have been impressed with I think this is really a sign of like a compelling writing and a compelling story, is that it not only is the story interesting me, but the setting is interesting me. And even like I know it's going into things, historically about Israel and Palestine, and things that it wasn't really on my radar to learn more about particularly. And it's making me curious, and it's making me want to know, which of these things, are actually based in fact. And it's making me like, I'm already feeling like when I'm finished with the book, I want to go like do some research and see like, which of these things are true, and like what really happened with that. This is a set like post World War One. Anyway, and I'm finding it more interesting than I thought. So I think that's just really a sign of good writing. It's something I want to do, especially because I try to, I'm writing with Christian themes and things that, a lot of people might not agree with or be interested in, but wanting to write in a way that still makes them compelling to people. And then one other thing I've just kind of noticed, like, as I'm rereading some of these books and reading some new ones, is that I think they've had just the tone of them, I think, had a big impact on the Firmament series. Obviously, I'd only read, let's see, when I started the Firmament series, I think I'd only read the first book. But I do think that just what I loved about that book gave some inspiration to things that I love about the Firmament series, which mostly is just like characters and relationships. And even though it's very, 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 very different, in both you do have like a young girl kind of maturing, growing into adulthood, and you have her sort of in sort of a man's world, in a sense, surrounded by older men who care for her, look out for her, respect her, and she, despite being like a young girl, and especially in the time period, is able to play a large role in big events and, you know, have the respect of older men around her, and one in particular that she really looks up to and is mentored by. And I just liked that dynamic, and I think, not intentionally even, but I do think going back and reading through some of them, that really did have a big impact on my series. And so that's been just kind of enjoyable to see and to realize. Number 6, I wanted to just talk for just a minute about, I mentioned earlier how I have kind of like, I've been doing a little editing, but honestly I mostly have kind of been taking a break from writing this past week. And honestly, it's felt really good, and I think I've really noticed this in the past couple of years, that it really helps me to have kind of an ebb and flow to my writing, and not to just, because I used to think like, oh, I should just try to make a habit of literally just writing every single day of my life, and that would be great, and I'd get so much done. And when I've tried to do that, I do just burn out. And I've learned more recently to embrace those times of rest, because I always find that I'll thrive for a while, you know, on like writing every day and having a hard and fast goal. But at a certain point, there will reach a point where, like, there's points that it's hard that you can push through, and then there's points where I just start to consistently dread it and just feel burned out. And I'm learning to recognize the difference between those, when to push through and when to go, okay, you know what, like, just to like rejuvenate my mind, and just to maybe like get some perspective, like whatever the reason, I need to just like step away for a little bit, to have a little break. And then it's really nice to have just like a week, a few weeks, however much time is needed, to not kind of feel like it's hanging over me and like, oh, I have this to do today. And it's not always bad to have that, but it's good to have both. I think it's good to have like, oh, I have to get this done today, and have, you know, some pressure behind it. And then it's also good to take a break from that. And so I'm trying to learn better how to work with my own rhythms. And it's hard because there's a fine line between where you don't want to be controlled by your feelings and just like blown about by every wind of, you know, and every whim. But you do want to recognize what is going to work best for you individually, your own mind and body, your own season, what's else is going on in your life. Just like take all those things into consideration and see what is actually going to be the best and healthiest and most effective way to meet your goals. And I've just really learned that about myself lately, like especially this past year. Like that's how I was able to do Nano, was like I knew that, okay, for 30 days I'm going to have this really hard push to get this done, and then after that I'm going to take a break for a few weeks before picking up this next project. I'm not going to go straight into something else. And so even looking forward to that rest helped motivate me through the time of work. And that's what I'm